My name is Art Davalos-Matthews, and I'm the Mental Health Wellness Counselor here at A.T. Still University of Health Sciences. People come to see me for a bunch of different reasons. You might see me because you're feeling lonely or disconnected. You may be having some test anxiety or some social anxiety. But the main reason that people come to see me is often because they're having difficulty managing the stress in their lives. I think a lot of times we want to believe that we shouldn't experience stress, that stress is a bad thing. But really, stress is necessary in our lives. It's a natural part of our lives. So it's something we have to kind of learn to manage and get along with. Now, what a lot of people may not know is that there's actually a relationship between stress and performance. That if there is relatively no stress, we put out very little and there's no performance. So imagine that you're sitting on a beach and somebody's bringing you a cocktail and you got your feet in the sand and your head in the sky. You don't have to perform. You're pretty much self-actualized in that moment. But if it got more important, if there was something to lose or to gain that was important to you, your performance would increase. And we see this maximum performance right about here. However, if the stress gets too high, then we have a loss of performance. I like to use the example of the Barrel Monkeys games, which is a kids game where you try and take these plastic monkeys that are all shaped like this, and you try and put them into a chain, picking them up from a barrel. If I just gave you the game, you'd probably just look at it, maybe you'd play with it, but you wouldn't see any point, so you might just get tired of it and quit. But if I told you there was a $1,000 scholarship if you could get all of those monkeys on the chain within a minute, you'd be working really hard and you'd be trying at your most level. So your attention, your focus, your motivation, and persistence would all go up. But if I told you you had to get them all on a chain within 30 seconds, or you would never be admitted to the university, suddenly the risk is too great and the stress too high and our performance drops. Now, that's because we have this natural system built in our bodies called the fight or flight response. When your sympathetic nervous system gets triggered from a natural threat, a dog is running after you and it's going to bite you, you run. Or you turn around and you try and kick that dog if you're brave. I'm not brave. If there is a real threat to you, you're going to try really hard, but if the threat is too big, the stress level is too high, you might just pass out. Body's got this built-in system of fight or flight, and one of the most extreme types of flight is to pass out right down on the ground. So down here, we have low emotion, and up here we have very high emotion. The brain works most efficiently when it comes to education at a low level of stress. This is where the brain can be logical, creative, and analytical. Down here, this is where the brain becomes emotional, reactive, and linear. The linear part is just get out, because you're trying to survive whatever the risk is. When we're dealing with stress, let me first say that when you wake up and you go to bed at night, we want that stress level to be low because we want your brain to be able to shut off, to go to sleep. And when you wake up, you want to feel rested. When you're studying, we want there to be a little bit more stress, but we still want the brain to be logical, creative, and analytical. And this is where we might want to take an exam so that we're at our peak. Our attention, focus, motivation, persistence are all really high. If we get to this point where the stress just feels too much, let's say you're trying to take a test, and all of a sudden your brain kind of crosses over and saying to you, oh my gosh, you're going to fail this test. If you fail this test, you'll probably fail the next one. And if you fail 2 tests, you might fail this class, and if you fail this class, you might be out of school. That's a lot of pressure to think about when you're taking an exam and trying to answer a question. When we're in this level of stress, we need to do something to try and pull the stress level back to a more functional area. So if we're down here and the brain is emotional and reactive and linear, the kinds of things that we need to do are very behavioral. What does that mean? That means I need to do something like breathing techniques, stretching, something called progressive muscle relaxation, something physically that we're going to do to help disconnect our brain from these thoughts that are causing this high stress and anxiety and bring it back this way. Once we've done that and brought the stress down a little bit, then we can also use other skills that are called cognitive skills. Oops. I did graduate undergrad. I just didn't do well in spelling. Cognitive things means, what am I thinking about? I need to change the focus of my thoughts. I need to change what I'm thinking from the standpoint of a value or a judgment. So if I'm telling myself, this test is a life or death thing, obviously I'm going to feel like I'm down here. If I don't do well on this test, then it's a pattern of behavior or it's a pattern of results that's going to get me thrown out of school. To change that cognitively, what we need to do is think more realistically. Reasonable, realistic, rational, or I like to throw in the last one, beneficial, because nobody likes to think that their thinking is irrational. If we can think more beneficially, logically, reasonably, rationally about that exam, if I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I failed this exam, I'm out of school. I've got to think more reasonably. I would say, okay, if I don't do well on this exam, I'll manage. I'll deal with the consequences. It doesn't have to be an indication of future failure. But right now, what I need to do is pay attention to this exam question. I don't have to worry about the whole test. If I just take question by question and answer each one to the best of my ability, I'll do fine on the test. I just need to be able to focus on this test question. So it's a matter of knowing where your thoughts are going and trying to move them to a more reasonable, rational, realistic, or beneficial thought. But again, if you're really, really anxious, and maybe even to the point of having a panic attack, we're going to have to do something behavioral first, and then we can come in with some thought to try and bring the rest of the risk down.